Actually, Janelle, let's bring in Scott McGrew right now.
Sure.
Scott, are you with us here?
Hi, Raj.
It's just amazing what we're seeing here. And I told your partner in terms of Scott Budman, yes, we knew this was coming at some point.
Absolutely.
But really, Steve Jobs, and it's emblematic of the Bay Area and the Silicon Valley. Born and raised in San Francisco, went to Homestead High School, down in the South Bay, and started this from the garage with Steve Wozniak in Los Altos. There's just so much a part of our fabric and culture here in the Bay Area, which obviously across the world as well.
Raj, I think even Steve himself would say, yes, I am a symbol, and that it's a good time to step down from Apple. Yes, it did catch us all off guard, but what a great time. Keep in mind, just a couple of days ago, Apple became the most powerful and most valuable company in the world. It is a leader in everything it's tried to do. There are several generations of iPhone out there still ahead. There are several generations of iPad still out there. He is leaving Apple as CEO at a terrific time for Apple. He couldn't have timed it better, and I'm sure he did time it. As far as Tim Cook, I mean, we've seen Tim on stage several times with Steve talking. He's a very competent leader, has a lot of loyal followers within Apple. And of course, remember, Steve Jobs has not been going to work every day at Apple as it is. As chairman of the board, not a whole lot changes there. So this is not good news for Apple by any stretch of the imagination. But stay calm. It will be okay for Silicon Valley and Northern California's absolute most important company.
It's interesting you say that, to say stay calm, because Steve Jobs is really everything about Apple. You brought up Tim Cook, who's also a workaholic. He's been with Steve Jobs for so many years. In terms of Steve Jobs, though, how would you describe him? This guy's a tough guy to work for, demanding and very a perfectionist, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is legendary as far as how much of a perfectionist he is. And look at the products he gets out of it. Extraordinary products that they can sell at a premium. The average laptop coming out of Apple is far more expensive than anything else. And then, of course, look at everything that everybody's tried to do with tablets. Copying Apple, he got it right the first time. And the most amazing thing about Steve Jobs is he seems to know what it is we want before we know we want them, like the iPad. That sort of culture, if he can have it, if he's infused that into Apple, then Apple will, at least in the short term, the next 5-7 years, be just fine.
Right, Scott. So he is stepping down as CEO, but it sounds like he's still going to play a role with Apple. How important is that for Apple's stability and success in the future?
I think it is very important. And we don't know day to day exactly how often Steve makes a phone call from his Palo Alto house into Apple. We do know he shows up every once in a while because it causes quite a buzz at One Infinite Loop there in Cupertino. But yes, him having some sort of touch point with Apple, some sort of conference with Apple as chairman of the board, I think is a very nice touch. That leaves him involved in the company, at least in name, and of course he's still an incredibly powerful man who will be able to call Tim Cook on the phone. And notice me presuming Tim Cook will be the CEO. I put my bottom dollar on that one. Being able to call Tim Cook on the phone and saying, hey, I got an idea, and everybody's going to listen.
Okay, Scott McGrew, I know you'll be following this all day and, of course, in the morning at 4:30 a.m. Thank you so much for your time. Now,
let's turn our attention instead to NBC Bay Area's business and tech expert, Scott McGrew. He joins us now. Scott, you've been covering, Apple for more than a decade now. Today's announcement, certainly not surprising, but probably a little bit unsettling for Apple employees as they pulled into the parking lot.
I'm sure it was, and unsettling. Remember, this is not the first time that Steve Jobs has left as CEO. The first time they fired him. And that didn't go very well for Apple. So can Apple survive as a company? Absolutely. And there are a couple reasons for that. Scott Budman touched on some of them. All of the technology that Apple has taken over the markets. iPad is the leader in tablets, iPhone in cell phones. But there's so much to be done still in iPad, iPhone, even the MacBook, that they can continue to come out with new versions, a little bit improved each time, for the next 5-6 years and still dominate the market.
Does this give his competitors, though, like Google and the Android phone and all that, are all those other companies now looking at this and saying, hey, we're going to be able to get a leg up here now?
They are so far ahead, Jessica, that I think these companies are going to do what Hewlett-Packard does, and that is decide, you know what, we're just not going to compete on Apple's level.
Scott, Apple's going to do fine. Tim Cook's going to come in there and do just fine. But the visionary part of this.
The visionary part.
And we were talking about this earlier. This is Steve Jobs. This is a Bay Area emblematic of the Silicon Valley. Born and raised here, Homestead High School, the whole deal. He loves that, and he loves the visionary part of this.
Yes.
Can that be duplicated?
Yes, it can, because for now, Steve Jobs just wants to be chairman of the board, and let's go ahead and assume they're going to appoint him to that position. That is about the equivalent of what he's been doing now, which is this sort of part-time CEO. There's no way that Steve Jobs was coming into the office and balancing the books with a pencil. He has been the visionary and the hands-off CEO for what, 2 years now, since the first time he stepped away.
But his deal is hands-on, and he's a hands-on guy.
A hands-on idea guy, a hands-on show me the product, a hands-on this is not good enough sort of guy. And he can certainly still do that as chairman of the board, I have no doubt. And his student Tim Cook will learn from that as well.
Okay, we move on. Thank you for your insight, Scott McGrew. We have
bringing in our other Bay Area business and tech reporter, Scott McGrew. He is in special tonight to talk to us. Thanks for coming in, Scott.
Well,
I know you'll be doing special duty tomorrow morning as well.
We'll be watching the Apple stock, but I got to say, it's nice to be with you at such a reasonable hour of the day. This is a much more reasonable time. Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Apple. Scott mentioned the fact that Tim Cook will be taking over. He has experience doing that, but in the end, he's not Steve Jobs. He does some things very well. He's already got experience at it. But Steve Jobs was a master marketer and salesman. And some of those presentations, he was like a rock star.
Brent, I found in our archive video when Steve Jobs first came back. He went away for a little while, came back for the first time. We have that tape. Let's go ahead and roll that. Video of him coming back. Now listen to the crowd. They are going to get to their feet. He looks thin. This is a couple of years ago. They're on their feet. They are enormously excited. Now, Tim Cook will never get this reaction. Tim Cook is not the magic man. He's not the P.T. Barnum. He is very competent, and as Scott Budman points out, the DNA is there, but there is something just magical about Steve Jobs. Again, as chairman, he will be around, but maybe no more of these stage appearances.
Yeah, and there's some of our experts have talked already about what happens in the future. Immediately, they do have the DNA in place.
Sure.
They already have a product line that they're working, and they work about a year out, so that's okay. After a year from now, that's where I think the real test for Apple will be. What do you see coming forward?
That's right. Now, they do it from a position of strength. I mean, they got $80 billion in the bank, for goodness sakes, and they dominate the iPad, they dominate the iPhone. You can continue to roll out updates to both of these things with little problem. So, yes, there's a year of new product in the pipeline. After that, you can still incrementally improve both of those. I mean, can you imagine 2 years from now, the iPhone not being the dominant phone, or 2 years from now, the iPad not being the dominant tablet computer? I don't think so. I think they've got a good coasting ahead of them.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, too, what Steve Jobs has meant to the Silicon Valley, what he has meant to the tech industry, what he's meant to computers. I mean, you look at some of the things that he was involved with, everything from the Mac, the MacBook, the iPod,
Sure.
the iPad, the iPhone.
Music, digital music.
You think of any one person that has invented some kind of gizmo that has shaped our world, and that's pretty amazing. This guy's been involved with at least 6 major projects.
Right.
That is sensational.
I'll give you another one. You remember the 1984 commercial where they showed off the Mac for the first time?
Right,
The woman throws. That was a Super Bowl commercial. Steve Jobs invented the cool Super Bowl ad. I mean, there's almost nothing he hasn't invented. So he is a modern-day Edison. There is no question about it.
I know you're going to be covering this tomorrow morning. There's a pretty good chance that they'll probably send you out to Apple headquarters or something like that. What do you think tomorrow at work is going to be like for Apple employees? I know to some extent the culture is there. They're going to get back to work. They're going to do what they do. But nonetheless, there's got to be a buzz and there's got to be some kind of emotion when your fearless leader, Steve Jobs, has to step down.
That's true. And now keep in mind, Steve Jobs was seen walking the halls every once in a while, and he would go out on Twitter, he's here, he's here. But he was not at Apple all that often. So the difference between him being part-time on-leave CEO and chairman of the board may not actually functionally be that different as far as running into the boss at the elevator at One Infinite Loop there.
All right, we will be following it throughout the course of the night. NBCBayArea.com tonight at 11, and Scott will be back with us tomorrow morning, bright and early. Thank you so much for coming in late night tonight and talking to us, Scott. We do appreciate it.